Do you have some go-to techniques in your own work? I mean, again, you kind of touched on this, but do you have some techniques that you tend to use over and over?
You mean in my teaching or my own
In
work?
your creative work,
Okay.
like you have techniques that when you're putting things together, you just start to go to, like you were talking about dovetailing, and do you find that just things pop up again and again?
Yeah, yeah. So um, I think for documentary makers, the historical, uh, the bedrock of starting films that involve interviews is to always know everything that has been said and delve into that material, really become familiar with that. But it's not enough to just have those words because the story is not going to be told in just words. This is not radio. So figuring out the language that will accompany those words and doing so by spending time in the shooting process so that you can kind of pre-visualize that style, that world that you want to create around this subject, uh, pays big dividends. If you have the time, if you have the budget, I would say push forward in the direction of not just thinking about the spoken word, but so I'll give you an example. So I was in India recently, filming with the trans activists in Assam, who lived along, who spoke very fondly of this river that flowed near the city of Guwahati, where she lived, and people in Assam have a very strong relationship with this river. There are songs written about it. There are festivals that happen. There are fish markets all along it. And to me, I heard that phrase during the interview, and I kind of filed it away. And I was going through the transcript, and I saw that she mentions that I'm like the Brahmaputra, flowing with it, changing with it. And that metaphor, that is a key. I think for all filmmakers to find, if you're lucky enough that your participants or your subjects, however you refer to them, I prefer participants, have given you something, and they all have, but it's hidden somewhere. If you can find it, then it shapes. So I made sure that I filmed as many things around the Brahmaputra, whether it was the setting sun, whether it was people that live off of the river with the fishermen, or whether it was simply cities that have grown alongside the Brahmaputra. Because, and then you do this in a structured way, your audiences will pick up on the fact that it's the title of a recent book that I read, The Covenant of Water. Water is a connective tissue in our life, and how it sort of builds communities. And so I think enriching your work and infusing it with metaphors that have something to do with your character, not just your own imposition and your own kind of non-diegetic kind of insertion into the work. To me, that's very powerful.
Wow, I love that. So music for Body Home World. How did you find music, and how did you work on the score for that?
Um, so there were two types of music that I was looking for this for the project. One that would be part of the documentary shorts, which be more traditional, but I also needed to make sure that the site in which the stories live, they have they're not just divorced from the music that is in the stories, the diegetic and the non-diegetic music that I'm using within the stories. So I found a composer whose main work had been in for video games, and so somebody who understood the value of how you create a composition that has stems, and those stems occur in different pieces and different parts, and then they also come together. So that approach was very valuable in creating pieces that used the entire composition, but on the website, we were using a stem or a sound that you may have heard in the piece. If you paid attention, of course, the idea is never to identify something very, very clearly, but overall it coheres. So that approach really paid well. And so we worked because he had done the music for each of the short pieces, and they were all unique. They had their moments, and he was able to take my cues and make transformations in the existing pieces so that the foregrounding, the backgrounding of instrumentation, of poignancy, and those were taken care of. But when it came to the website, the interactions themselves had to be in some ways punctuated. So it's tricky on a website if you click on something and you don't get some type of a feedback, whether it's a click or whether it's a sound or something changes on the screen. And if it's too silent, then it's eerie because all of a sudden the video playback begins and that's full of sounds, but the website is silent. So he was instrumental in working through that process with when you, for instance, the website has a mandala, which is comprised of WebGL three-dimensional particles. And you can actually take your mouse, or if you're working on a touch device, you can turn the mandala in the other direction. That turning has a sound that comes from reversing one of the music beds that was used in the film. So you went about it kind of thoughtfully, not borrowing or cobbling together pieces, but working off of a piece whose stems served in various directions. For the piece that I was working with in Assam, I was very clear that I wanted sounds from the region and that people would identify, that there wouldn't be just generic music, which is, has its function. But I was really lucky to find a composer who was from Guwahati, which is the capital city, who had studied jazz at the Berklee School of Music and was able to take folk compositions, but also do improvisational work that made it more contemporary. And it was, in documentary world, you have to work with the blessings of the entire world because no money is not going to make it all happen. Yeah. So I wrote to this composer, and all I did told him was a brief of the film. And his immediate response was, you're welcome to use the work because you're doing it for awareness and educational reasons, and I'm happy to be part of it. He didn't even ask to see a cut of the film to approve how I had used this film. I mean, I have to say, for a creative person, when you have conceptualized something and done something without the context of it being used in a film, it has its purpose, it has its vision in how you thought of it. To give it to somebody, it's like your child or your baby that you're letting in the hand of another person. I was really blessed because I just sent him the finished cut of the film, and in a very respectable way, I sort of said, "I'm giving this back to you with trepidation because I have changed the context of your music. I have used it in a different way." And he wrote me a beautiful email saying that he was so happy to see how thoughtfully his songs had been used and how they had been given a new life in the context of this film that he hadn't even thought of. Um, I do think that looking for things that you believe belong within the film and not being satisfied until you find them. And of course, luck is a big part of it. Finding this composer was for me a big stroke of fortune. Um, and it really impacts the film. I mean, don't let anyone tell you that music is an afterthought. It is the sound of the film, right? Um, yeah, so students, when I'm teaching, to kind of switch my hats, um, especially students who work on camcorders, which record sound as an as a it's like it's happening. I'm going to pay attention to the film. The sound is just getting recorded. I always think about, like, okay, if you're not wearing headphones on a shoot, then you're not listening. You're just watching. You might see the views move, but you're not really listening to the quality of it. So I try to inculcate in them not just thinking about the visual, but also the ambience and how the ambience can become a part of the location, the space, um, and really having them hunt through musical scores until they find what they're looking for. So I recently finished a big project with my senior film class, a senior television film class, where they've created a docu-series following an a cappella group on campus that traveled through different parts of Long Island and to Boston, taking part of this intercollegiate a cappella championship. And they were trying to find music bits for it because there were transitions and there were things that the music for the film was pretty much the group singing, so we didn't really need as much music, but we needed for transitions. And he downloaded about 40 cuts. And to demonstrate that the need to listen to each of them, we were using Frame.io. I went to 20 of them and made annotations about its quality, what it said to me, just to kind of demonstrate to them that all pieces have a unique quality. You can't just say, drag it into the timeline and then leave it, leave the audiences deal with the dissonance that it might create. So absolutely essential.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. How did you find that composer? Were you just searching for him online or just a referral from a friend or something?
Yeah, so I initially I did a search for Assamese folk music composers, and I came across a lot of traditional stuff. There were many because that region is known for its folk music. And then I found one live show that the singer and he had done, and I saw his name, and of course, down I went the rabbit hole, and I ended up finding him online, and had to get to him through multiple ways, some social media, his email. Uh, as any filmmaker will tell you, you have to be like almost like a private eye when you want to work on a film. You got to bury, you got to persist, you have to be creative and reaching out to people. But it's driven by this desire to have something.
And it's absolutely true that the uniqueness, it stays with you. It's like
Yeah.
that aftertaste is often coming from the score.